I'm Chad Anderson. I am managing partner at Space Capital. We are a seed stage venture capital firm. We're actively investing out of our third fund and manage about 75 million in assets. And we are exclusively focused on investing in the space economy. So for us, that's much more than just rockets and satellites. That we're really interested in the data that comes from space. So we're focused on three technology stacks: GPS, geospatial intelligence, and communication. 10 years ago, it was a much different sort of place. The market was very limited. On one side, you had the government. On the other side, you had a handful of defense contractors. And that was the entire market. And the incumbents were very successful in keeping new entrants out. And it wasn't until SpaceX kind of broke through that deadlock. And when they launched their first commercial customer in 2009, they lowered the barriers to entry. They brought the cost down, but they also published their pricing, which allowed entrepreneurs and new entrants for the first time to go and raise capital. They knew how much it would cost to execute their business plans. And so we started to see those new entrants, the first pioneering new entrants, start to raise capital and go out and start to execute the start of their business plans around 2013 to 14. A lot of people, when they say that space is very expensive and very long term, because if you look at the space economy more broadly, and that's what a lot of the things that we write about publicly, like this is what we talk about, that the infrastructure piece is a really critical piece of this, of what's going on here. And we need the rockets and we need the satellites to provide this data. Data supply is very key. But that is commoditizing. It's sort of the plumbing behind what's going on here. The real interesting stuff is on the applications of space-based data and how that data is being used. So most of the types of companies that we are looking at to invest in from our fund are applications of space data. So a very unique data set, using it in very unique and novel new ways, but no more or less risky than any other sort of early stage company. Investing your dollars, your pounds into space companies is actually less risky in a lot of ways. It holds a special place in my heart for lots of reasons, but one is I went to business school there, and this is when I was, discovered the opportunity in space in the first place. And so I've gotten involved with the catapults and have been a strong supporter of what the organization is doing. But for me, what's most interesting is the technical prowess on the satellite side. So everything from Surrey satellites and being a leader in the small satellite movement, as some of these early pioneering companies. Airbus set up, some key operations in the country. And so there's been a lot going on in terms of the space sector in the UK. And so particularly with regards to the application side, which again aligns very well with our fund and where we are spending our time and energy, is that if you look at what's going on, space is a data play. It is, the vast majority of revenue and market in the space economy comes from satellites and the data from those satellites. And the UK has been a leader in a few key areas which are very exciting for me. One of which is in monitoring our oceans and illegal and unregulated fishing and combating that. So it's very difficult. The seas have always sort of been like this unmonitorable place. It's just so vast and so difficult. However, with satellites, you can combat that. And this is, one of the key challenges of today. Again, one of these global challenges that we're looking to understand and address. Satellite data allows us to do that. And the Catapult was one of the leading organizations, was the leading organization, pulling that effort together. and has done some incredible work, and they're only just getting started. They're now applying that to forests, which is fantastic. And all this kind of ties into retail. So there's huge opportunities in retail for organizations that are looking to understand their supply chains and make sure that they know that the items that they're sourcing and the materials that they're sourcing, the produce, the fish, everything is sustainably sourced. Again, satellites allow us to do that. And then another one that I think is sort of an emerging opportunity that I'm very excited about, that I think the UK is going to continue to play a key role in, is with regards to climate change, which is obviously a global, pressing, important, immediate issue. That satellite data, again, that's what the reason we know about this and we know that it's an issue, aside from localized events, is because we get the big picture from space and from satellites. And so we understand the problem because of this. We can target, and start to address this using data from satellites. And the UK has been a leader in a lot of these sort of ESG type developments. And so I'm very excited to see what happens when we start to tie the data together with financial transactions, as more and more shareholders and stockholders are demanding this of the companies that they're investing in. More corporations are putting this as a key priority. I've heard it in like the top 3 of many of the largest organizations globally. And I think the UK is going to play a key role in helping to make sure that that happens and tying all those pieces together. With regards to the European GNSS system, the UK's interest in developing that and being part of that, and then with Brexit and no longer having that, using OneWeb as a GNSS system is very interesting. From that perspective, it makes a ton of sense why the government would get involved and see this as important to national sovereignty. And from a communications perspective, because it's important to connect people in the rural areas, in which the US there is a lot, and in the UK there is a lot of rural areas. I mean, particularly, think about Scotland and the Highlands and Islands. There's a lot of people that could benefit from being connected to data and the internet. And so, no, I think that it makes sense why the government would be investing in this, and it is ambitious, and I hope it's successful. We're in this really interesting time where a lot of the groundwork has been laid, and it's all starting to come together now. And there's a whole bunch of people who are just perking up and paying attention for the first time and trying to understand, where we're at in this thing. And it's just so fun to say, that we've got robotic missions to the moon this year. We've got, the first 2 fully private space tourism missions, one to the space station, one to orbit the Earth, happening later this year. We've got private space stations being launched in very soon. We've got, SpaceX and NASA both going to the moon. And again, we've got multiple efforts happening. And so we don't all have our eggs in just one basket, which is also very exciting. So yeah, we're talking in the next 5 years, things are going to be very interesting. And in the next 10 years, it's going to be unrecognizable. So what happens next, particularly with Starship, is I don't think anyone's ready for what's coming. Starship will fundamentally change the way we think about and operate in space. If they're able to do what they say they're going to do, they can lift an incredible amount of payload capacity into orbit. And they can do it for a ridiculously low cost, for lower cost than what the smallest launch vehicles are doing today. They're going to be able to launch as much as your heart desires. Not only that, they can refuel it, and they can zip around to any place in the solar system. and it can land, and it can take off again. And it can open its hatch, and it can scoop up garbage on the way back down. It could stay in orbit and be a habitat for tourists for as long as they wanted. Come down a month later. It could be a manufacturing facility. You launch a manufacturing facility, you stay up in orbit with people for 30 days, come back down when your experiments are done. And you're doing all of this for, I don't know what the price is, but low single. I mean, the launch cost they're saying is going to cost them $5 million to launch. I don't know what they're going to price it at, but you could imagine that they could do this in the tens of millions. It's insane. It's just absolutely crazy to think about. It's going to fundamentally change the way we think. It's no longer going to be this place that's difficult to get to, expensive to get to, hard to get to. It's so difficult to predict what is going to happen in 2035. And, best of luck to anyone who's trying to do that. I mean, if you go back to what we talked about earlier, the only way that we can understand and start to address the largest global challenges that we face today, name them: climate change, illegal and unregulated fishing, deforestation, flooding and droughts, extreme weather patterns, wildfires, you name it. The only way we're able to understand and address these global challenges is with satellite data. And so, we all, I think, need to sort of step back and see the big picture here. And we could all use a little bit more perspective, I'd say.